good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules to learn more about how the U.S. Trade and Development Agency can help you, your business, or help the companies that you are working with. My name is Miles Hansen. I'm the president and CEO of World Trade Center Utah, and we are very grateful to be joined today with our colleagues from the USTDA, Todd Abrajano, Dianne Quebral, Kress, and Verinda Fike have taken time out of their busy schedules to help have a discussion with us today. Right at the top, I'd like to emphasize that we want this to be interactive. Just talking to Dianne a minute ago, she talked about how it's almost like a talk show. So it's not going to be a slide deck. We're not going to kill you with PowerPoint, but we do want people to be watching in to listen. We know we have people watching live on YouTube and people will be watching us later, which puts a premium on those that are joining us by Zoom this morning to go ahead to use the chat function to ask questions, to engage, and to help be participants in the discussion. Looking at the registration list, we've got a phenomenal group. And for our friends at USTDA, as I looked over that list, who we targeted were some of our key, what we call multipliers, the key consultants, the service providers, the people here in Utah that we spend a lot of time working with, supporting their efforts as they go out and they work with many other companies. And so we have lots of people on the line who are doing, working with a lot of different companies from a lot of different industries who are going to take this knowledge, take this information, and push that out to the companies that they are working with. And the same thing is true. We have people from the World Trade Center Utah team. We will be doing the same. For those who are joining us who haven't worked with World Trade Center Utah before, looking at the list, it looks like we have participants from 15 different states and 3 different countries. And so our reach is pretty broad this morning. It shows a lot of interest in what the USTDA is doing and the tools and the services that they can provide to help U.S. manufacturers expand into global markets and particularly into emerging markets. But very briefly, World Trade Center Utah is the state of Utah's trade promotion authority. We work on behalf of the governor and our legislature and our state leaders to help lead Utah's international business development. We also are membership organizations. We work with our members and really companies across the state to help empower companies to increase their international sales, to attract international investment here to the state of Utah, and to make Utah known globally as a hub for trade, investment, and innovation. We do that through a number of programs and services that we provide free to companies across the state. We manage grant programs to help de-risk a little bit the effort to grow internationally. We provide free market research, free consultations, free B2B matchmaking with partners in other countries. And at the end of the day, we exist to open doors and generate momentum for our Utah companies. And so for anybody joining us for the first time after this webinar, you'll get an email with a little bit more information about what we can do to plug and support your efforts, whether you're a company that's growing, whether you're an economic development organization, helping to do this work in your local community, or if you are a consultant or a service provider that's working with clients. We want to be helpful. We want to help companies take advantage of the global disruption that's happening in markets around the world. But we have a full agenda today and a very important topic, and so I'll go ahead and introduce our first 2 speakers. First off, very, very grateful to have Todd Abrajano with us today. Todd serves as the Chief Operating Officer and the Head of Agency for the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, leading the agency's export promotion efforts, supporting U.S. jobs and businesses and priority development projects within emerging markets in the energy, transportation, ICT, healthcare, and agribusiness sectors. He previously served as a Deputy Director, acting, as well as Senior Advisor to the Director of the agency. Before joining USTDA, Todd served as the Director of the Office of White House Liaison at the U.S. Department of Commerce, where he supported Secretary Wilbur Ross and other senior-level commerce officials on policy and operational matters. And prior to joining the Trump administration, Mr. Abrajano served as President of Turning Point Public Affairs, which he founded in 2010. Through Turning Point, he focused on legislative and regulatory grassroots advocacy and his clients' strategic communications and government relations needs. During the 2016 U.S. presidential campaign, Turning Point was retained by the Donald J. Trump for President campaign, for which Mr. Abrajano served as the Missouri Communications Director. Todd received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Political Science with a concentration in International Relations from Yale. And Dianne Quebral, and Dianne, we go back a while, and I don't even know if Dianne remembers this, but I don't know, 3 years ago or so, early on in 2017, I went to work, at the time I was working in Washington, D.C., I went to work at the National Security Council and I worked there over as a director of global affairs, working on Middle East issues. And one of the perks of working in the executive office of the president is that the president has a box at the Kennedy Center. And so for people working there at the White House, the president doesn't go to the Kennedy Center every night. And so people working there, there's a system you go in and you can get tickets and you can go and you can enjoy theater, musicals, or whatnot. And it was like my second or third day working at the White House. And I was lucky enough to get some tickets. My wife and I went, and Dianne was there with her husband, and we sat right by each other and had a great conversation. And that was my introduction, if you will, to the White House. And over the course of time I worked there, Dianne and I had a few opportunities to work together on a couple smaller things. But really it was after that when I came out to Utah to lead World Trade Center Utah, and Dianne then began working more with the USTDA, that we had opportunities to engage and to continue to build on this relationship between World Trade Center Utah and USTDA. So Dianne, thank you very much for pulling this together. It's great to turn a connection at the Kennedy Center into a longer lasting relationship where here we are today sharing expertise that you have and USTDA has with our companies here in Utah and those joining in from elsewhere. Just a little bit more background on Dianne. She serves as the White House Liaison and Director of Public Engagement at the USTDA. Prior to that, she was a SAP, a Special Assistant to the President, and a Deputy Director at the Office of Public Liaison and Business Liaison at the Executive Office of the President. Prior to that, she has many years of experience at Fairfax County. And, one other thing about Dianne, when the pandemic hit, Dianne is one of those people who can jump in and get things done in a lot of different areas. So if I remember correctly, Dianne, you were pulled over to work on health issues. And you helped that and helped to guide the administration's response to the pandemic. And now you're back at USTDA full-time doing the good work you're doing there. So Dianne, Todd, Verinda, and Carl, thank you for making time to be with us today. At this point, I'll go ahead and pass the baton over to you, Dianne, and you can take it from here.
Thanks so much for the warm introduction, Miles. And we're really excited to be working again with the World Trade Center Utah. And for me, I'm really excited to be talking about making global local and seeing the different ways that we can encourage more trade and opportunities for exports and job creation, economic development coming out of the state of Utah. And specifically, I'm working more closely with USTDA. I was joking with Miles about using our talk show approach today. Unfortunately, I don't have an applause button, but I'm going to go ahead and start asking a few key questions of Todd. I'm really excited to be working more closely with Todd at USTDA. He's got great experience both in supporting business development, but also international trade from his time at USTDA, and has, quite honestly, literally traveled the world helping to introduce U.S. companies and business opportunities and to build partnerships between the United States that not only improve our international trade opportunities, but also our global international relations. So it's great to have Todd here. Todd, I'm going to kick it over to you and ask you our first question of the day. I know Miles mentioned in your introduction that you've only been as COO from August 5th, and if you could just take a moment to assure the crowd about what you plan as your time forth as the head of agency here. And then could you provide some background on USTDA as a federal agency, what makes us different and unique from other federal agencies, and some of the other partner agencies that we work with?
Sure. Thanks, Dianne. And Miles, to you and your team, thanks to you as well for hosting today. Dianne, to your question, yes, I have been the head of agency for about 2 weeks, but prior to that, as Miles mentioned, I have been with the agency since January of 2018, serving in multiple different functions, and served as the acting deputy director of the agency for 1.5 years, where I worked very closely with our previous acting director to run the agency on a day-to-day basis. I've run the operations team. Separately, I've run the program side of our agency. And I will continue to run the agency just like it's been run over the last 2.5 years that I've been there. So no major changes, at least not on my watch, and we will continue to do the great work that we do. To the second part of your question, the history of USTDA, really interesting. USTDA is an independent federal agency and has been since 1992. But prior to that, we were actually a little sort of pilot project within USAID. And USAID is really known for more of their humanitarian international aid efforts. But many years ago, back in the 80s, they started this little pilot project to try to figure out if they could help US firms do development work in the markets that they were working in. And the project within USAID became so successful, the conversations began between Congress and the executive branch to really spin USTDA out as an independent federal agency. And so that happened in 1992, and we've been going full bore at USTDA ever since. So we've been in business as an independent agency for almost 3 decades. Our congressional appropriation has grown over those years to what is now nearly $80 million a year. Comparatively speaking, our budget is much smaller than a number of the other larger department and cabinet department agencies around government, and we are, I think, a very minute portion of what our annual defense budget is. But with the money that we do get from Congress, we're able to do really amazing work. We do that work in conjunction with a lot of other U.S. government agencies. We work very closely with the Department of Commerce, where I first started in the administration. We work with their U.S. Commercial Service and Foreign Commercial Service. We work very closely with the State Department, with their economic officers, their political officers, to really, the reason we work with those groups is to really find the business opportunities for U.S. firms in the infrastructure development work that we do. And then, we dive into those opportunities and we hopefully in the end provide opportunities for U.S. companies to export their goods and services. And so that's really how the agency was formed. It's how we came to be. In addition to working closely with Commerce and State, we work very closely with the former OPIC, which is now the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, otherwise known as the DFC, very closely with the Export-Import Bank of the United States, and work very closely with some of the other department and cabinet level agencies, like the Department of Transportation. Very closely, we work very closely with the FAA, Department of Energy. We do a lot of energy work at USTDA, and so we've got friends and helpers really all over the U.S. government.
Great, thank you so much for that, Todd. I appreciate it. I think USTDA often gets confused with other federal agencies, so thanks for sharing how we are different. Can I ask you just a little bit about the key project preparation tools that USTDA uses and employs as we do our work, and how that in turn helps our U.S. companies to create jobs and expand the economy?
Sure. Let me just rewind just a quick bit here. You just mentioned how USTDA is different, and we really are. We have a very unique dual mandate. One half of our mandate is development, obviously, in our name. And we look for projects where we can really have development impact in the emerging markets and developing countries where we work. But the second, obviously, is trade. We're an export promotion agency. And we're the only agency of government that has that unique dual mandate. So that's really how we're different. A lot of people, have a tendency to either confuse us as being a part of Commerce, which we're not, or think that maybe we are a part of the new Development Finance Corporation, which we're not. Their main goal at the DFC is development. They're looking for development impact, and they're really more concerned with financing. We are the early stage project preparation arm of the U.S. government. And so we have a number of tools to answer your question directly, Diane, within our toolbox at USTDA, where we can help not only our partner countries, but U.S. firms in order to bring forth win-win situations where we can help those countries develop the infrastructure, the critical infrastructure that they want to develop, and help U.S. companies be a part of that development process. And so a couple of really big buckets that we have are, one, our feasibility studies. So we come in early, as I mentioned, and do the feasibility studies to really get projects to a bankability stage where they can be funded and they can be implemented. And so we do a lot of feasibility studies all over the globe. Our second big bucket is our reverse trade missions. This is a big part of what we do. And with our reverse trade missions, what we do is we bring foreign buyers typically, or high-level government executives or high-level private sector executives to the United States to see U.S. technology solutions in action. So we will take them to typically 3 different cities across the country. We will show them, let's just say they're interested in building a port. So we will take them to large ports in the United States where they can see different types of U.S. technologies being utilized in those on-the-ground situations. And so it really gives U.S. firms an ability to be well marketed and to get in front of the people who will end up making the buying decisions for these large projects. And so that's really the 2 main things that we do. We also offer technical assistance, though, where we will go in and we will train individuals in certain sectors, as well as we look at regulatory and standards issues in countries to make sure that U.S. technology solutions have the ability to be able to be exported into those countries. And so we have a number of different things that we do. I would encourage everybody to take a look at our website if you'd like to know more. It's USTDA.gov. If you click on the Work With Us section, you can figure out how you can work with us in a number of different circumstances. And if you'll scroll down on the homepage, you can see what our tools are in even more detail.
Great, thanks so much for talking about that a little bit more specifically. One thing I do want to offer up, since I knew World Trade Center Utah is such a strong Making Global Local partner, even as a new partner, and that is the reverse trade missions. I'm sure we'll get to this a little later in the discussion about where we stand with the pandemic. But I do want to just take a minute and share with all the U.S. companies that we have here today about the differences between our RTMs, or reverse trade missions, the business briefings, as well as our workshops. And I lovingly refer to our business briefings, which are held as a part of every reverse trade mission, as our shopping day for our foreign delegations. And that's the opportunity for our foreign delegations to take to the microphone to talk specifically about what they are looking to accomplish on their trip here in the United States. They have the opportunity and often share information about key milestones, key obstacles they face, perhaps budgetary information and timelines, and a lot of important information that would be helpful for U.S. companies to know as they consider submitting for a bid. And this is all, of course, happening before a bid is issued, before a tender is finalized. So great opportunity to capture key information that would help U.S. companies to be more competitive. And then our workshops, which we'll talk about a little bit later, are opportunities for our U.S. companies to convene under the USTDA umbrella overseas. So with some of our specific initiatives, we'll offer a workshop, which is usually a 1 to 2 day seminar overseas to talk to a specific issue. I know in the spring of last year, we held a workshop focused on aviation in Durban, South Africa, which was a fantastic opportunity. We brought together the foreign delegations from 8 different nations, along with about 50 to 60 US companies. So imagine what a cozy environment that is to do business, as opposed to, pounding the pavement at the Paris Air Show. So I just wanted to highlight those differences for our US companies on the call. Todd, you have so much interesting information to share. Can you talk a little bit about where USTDA does our work around the world?
Sure. So we internally within the agency break the globe up into 4 distinct regions. Those being our Indo-Pacific region, and Verinda Fike, who's joining us today, is our regional director for the Indo-Pacific region. We also have a large region called internally MENA-EE, which stands for Middle East, North Africa, Europe, and Eurasia. And Kress, who is joining us today, is our regional director for that region. We also have Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as Latin America and the Caribbean. We have a 5th region internally that doesn't really specifically cover a particular region. We call it worldwide, and it handles a number of other things outside of those 4 specific regions. But we work in multiple regions and in priority countries all over the globe. Typically, we will have a strategic planning session in the agency every year to determine what those priority countries will be. And every year we try to focus between 20 and 24 countries where we do the majority of our work during that year. Those countries will change sometimes year to year, sometimes they won't change much, sometimes they'll change a lot, depending on where we see the opportunities, not only for us to be helpful on the development side, but for U.S. firms to be able to compete. And really, it's demand driven. So we want it to be demand driven because we want U.S. companies to be successful. And so, for example, let's just take Verinda's region. She's going to talk about that a little bit more today. But in the Indo-Pacific region, for example, we are very heavily invested in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and we're actually growing. Last year, we received a large amount of transfer funding from the State Department specifically for the Indo-Pacific region. And so we are now looking to open additional offices in the region. We're moving into Malaysia. We're taking a look at the Pacific Islands. And so we're really focusing quite a bit down there. But, within each region, we try to pick the priority countries, as I said, where demand for U.S. technology exists and where we know we can make some real development impact.
That's great. One thing I want to highlight is for our audience, if you go to USTDA.gov, you'll see, I'd like to just put out a plug that it's a brand new website. We've done a lot of changes over the last year from the public affairs perspective. USTDA has a new logo, which we're proud to show off as well. But under the website, you'll see that there's a section for regions and sectors. So if you're interested in a particular sector or if you're interested in a particular region, please scroll all the way down. You'll also note that there are staff links, and you'll find the bios and contact information for our staff that specialize in each of those sectors and regions. So just a helpful tip as we navigate through this. Todd, I know USTDA has a number of key initiatives, and I'd like to see if you could take a few minutes to talk about the U.S. gas infrastructure exports initiative, as well as a little bit on the global procurement initiative and Access Africa, just at a high level.
Sure. So let me take those one at a time. Let me start with our global procurement initiative. This is, I think, one of the most impactful initiatives that we have at the agency. And I've thought that since I joined a little more than 2.5 years ago. In the early 2010s, we had a lot of companies that were coming to us saying, we aren't bidding on international tenders anymore because we can't compete and we know we're not going to win. The problem, was, and in some circumstances continues to be, that a lot of international tenders really look at the lowest cost and don't take into account, other things like life cycle cost analysis or best value determination. And so, as internally in the agency, as we were trying to figure out a way to deal with this problem, we put our heads together and came up with the Global Procurement Initiative. What the GPI does is partner with countries overseas and train their procurement officials to do just what I said, to look at life cycle cost analysis and best value determination as opposed to just lowest cost. And so, when people do that, when procurement officials do that, they see that, yes, U.S. technology solutions may cost more upfront, but over the life of those technologies or that equipment that's being provided, the cost can come down, especially when you take into account service contracts and maintenance contracts and things like that. The United States and our industry partners that we work with build some of the best, highest quality technology solutions in the world. If people are looking to compete for international tenders where they have an opportunity to not just be looked at in terms of lowest cost, we can compete and win a lot. And over the last 7 years, we stood up the GPI in 2013. Over the last 7 years, we've seen in the partner countries where we're working, I think we're almost up to 13 partner countries now, but we've trained thousands of procurement officials, and we're seeing in those partner countries, U.S. companies back in the game, bidding on those tenders and actually winning. And so we're really proud of what we've been able to do in GPI, not only because it helps U.S. companies be able to do what they do, but it encourages, as we continue to build partnerships, it encourages other countries to join and take a look at this other way of doing business. And so we're really proud of that. The U.S. Gas Infrastructure Initiative that Dianne mentioned, we started this in November of 2017. Obviously the United States has gotten to a point where we are now one of the largest, if not the largest producer of natural gas in the world. And there's a lot of opportunity across the globe now, especially in LNG. And so we've, over the last almost 3 years, been doing a number of different projects in the gas sector, whether that be helping build LNG terminals all across the globe, whether it be figuring out, helping countries figure out where to site those terminals, whether it be building regasification units, but lots of different projects in the gas sector. Last, to speak to Access Africa, which you mentioned, Diane. This is a fairly new initiative for us at USTDA. It was started within the last year, and what it really is about is figuring out how we can take the continent of Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, to the next level. We spent a number of years partnering with USAID on an initiative called Power Africa, where we helped African countries become electrified, and we've helped millions of citizens across that continent finally get electricity to their homes and businesses. But now that they have that, it's time to move on to the next level. And that next level is really being able to help those individuals within the African continent get to a point where they can build businesses and they can compete not only within the continent, but internationally as well. And so Access Africa, we've partnered with a number of very large telecommunications and information technology firms that are very well known: Cisco, Microsoft, GE, just to name a few. But we have a number of partners, and we're looking to really build the backbone of their network infrastructure across the continent so that they can really get more involved in the international economy.
That's great. Thanks, Todd. And now for the fun question. Can I ask, what has been your favorite USTDA experience, if you're able to narrow it down to one?
So that's a really, really hard question. As Diane mentioned, I've traveled all over the globe, and I have been, it would be really hard for me to pick just one experience. But I will say this, in the 2.5 years that I've been at USTDA, I've traveled across 5 continents. Was hoping to get to Australia this year before COVID happened. But I have, the best thing about being a TDA, and it's been one of the highlights of my career, is that it gives me the opportunity to see up close and personal the impact of the work that we do and the impact of US industry, goods and services that are utilized in these countries for the major infrastructure development projects that are being done. Whether it's in the energy sector, the transportation sector, whether it's going to a power plant that we've helped facilitate, whether it's going to an airport where we have done, air transportation or air safety work, whether it's going to a port and seeing, how that port has been able to grow and how the economy of that country has been able to benefit from, a port being there. That's really, for me, the best experiences at the agency, just being able to see the great work that we do every day.
That's fantastic. Todd, thanks so much for the opportunity to sit here and pick your brain a bit. I'm going to go ahead and continue on and bring in one of our regional and sector experts now to talk a little bit more fully about energy and my previous conversations with MGL Utah and, the World Trade Center there. I know that energy is a big piece of the work that happens there with Miles and the team. Carl Kress, I'm thrilled that he's able to join us today. He has a wealth of experience at USTDA, and he is our regional director for the MENA region, as was mentioned earlier. And he is responsible for developing and implementing the USTDA's strategies for economic development programs in the region. And Carl also is the sector lead, the co-lead for our worldwide sector team, as well as on energy, and the co-lead for USTDA's brand new healthcare sector. So we're really excited to have Carl here on the call today. I was teasing him earlier that he was the invisible man, but I'm glad to see that his screen is now working and everybody can see him on screen with me. Carl, can I ask you just a little bit about why USTDA made the decision to focus on energy, and where have we had successes for successful exports in this sector?
Sure, and just I have to give a shout out to the World Trade Center Utah, because it was their technical assistance that brought me back from the ether here. So appreciate that. So we have worked in the energy sector since TDA was created, as Todd was laying out a few minutes ago, because it is such a tremendous strength on the part of U.S. industry. When we look at potential projects, what we're looking for is, what do the locals need? We're a foreign assistance agency, so we're looking for how do we support economic development in a country, be it Egypt or Brazil or Indonesia or wherever. And at the same time, we're looking at what is the potential for U.S. exports, goods, services, and technologies, because there are an awful lot of local development projects that that U.S. industry isn't going to want to or be able to get involved with. Some of it relates to what Todd was mentioning with the Global Procurement Initiative, where there may just be low-cost providers and there's really not much chance for the U.S. unless there is a change in their procurement practices. And then others where the U.S. just doesn't manufacture. However, there are many sectors where there is substantial opportunities for U.S. And some of these are, of course, the oil and gas sector is a top area for that. And we've worked there for many years to great success, be it, as Todd was mentioning, the various gas type activities, the infrastructure that can help move gas into and out of and through a country. Also refining. U.S. companies are, second to none in the refineries area. And so we do a lot of work around the globe with refineries modernization and sometimes greenfield refineries. And so just across the spectrum with oil and gas, we've actually been doing a bit more of late, exploring areas where to help with exploration and enhancing oil production. So certainly shale gas development and so on in certain markets and so on. So that oil and gas sector is a major one. We've also had a lot of success in the past in geothermal. That's another strength of the United States. We're very proud of the work that we've done, for example, in Turkey, where we were at the cutting edge of getting their utility scale geothermal work off the ground using US technology. Solar, we have worked in that area for many years. I think that is one that's been more challenging with the exports, but there are very much bright spots in that one. I think we've been doing a lot of solar projects in Africa in particular in recent years. Other areas it's been a little bit more challenging. And I will note that there was here a note in the chat section here about a idea for a 200 megawatt power plant in East Africa. And yes, TDA operates there, and we would love to hear more about that and see if it is something that we might be able to be supportive of and partner with. Wind is something that we've supported in various places. Nuclear also. Nuclear to a lesser degree, simply in part because of the magnitude. The feasibility studies for nuclear power plants are immense, and also there has not been as many new builds. But we are seeing a greater increase in interest in that with small modular reactor technology that's developing right now. And also TDA in the past has done work with cleanup and storage and so on to increase safety. TDA has also done a tremendous amount of work all around the world in the transmission and distribution space with smart grid modernization and so on. And also looking at battery storage. That's something obviously that's developing, and how to integrate that into the grid, and microgrids for, be it for, a small city or a university or some sort of off-grid applications. So we really, and hydro. We have done some work in hydro, not so much in recent years. We've done some run-of-the-river type hydro, but that's been a little bit less. So it's really across the board. But again, for any of these where there is a U.S. company or where U.S. industry is interested in a project in another country, and there are U.S. goods, services, and technologies that could be involved, we're very interested in learning about that and seeing how we can be supportive.
That's great. Thank you, Carl. That was a great introduction to all the different, sometimes it's dizzying to me how many different subsectors there are just within the energy portfolio. Can you share with us a recent success story that you've seen in the energy sector, and how U.S. exports have not only made an impact here in terms of job creation and economic development opportunities, but also overseas where that project has been completed?
Sure. I think an example that sort of ties together several of the sectors that we just talked about, and it goes far back and then also is current, is that we supported a solar project in Jordan a number of years ago. So when we do a feasibility study, it takes a number of years for the actual project, the feasibility study to be completed, for all the work to be done, financing secured, and then finally constructing and installation. So back in 2011, bear with me, we will get current. We supported a feasibility study for Kawar Energy in Jordan. They wanted to build a large utility scale solar project, and they were working with a US engineering firm, CH2M Hill. So we supported that feasibility study, which they went forward with. And it was interesting because the vision for Kawar Energy there was both obviously to build the power plant, but also Jordan, as with many countries, it takes some time for regulatory structures to be developed and so on. And so Kawar's strategy was a little bit of the, if you build it, they will come, of if we build a successful project, which was of course in response to what the government was looking for, but if we do it in a way that involves the most modern technologies and processes and applications, then hopefully, and it did come to pass, that it helped with moving the government forward in developing their solar strategy and regulatory structure and so on to make it a more open market and pave the way for more solar power in there. And so by 2016, the plant started operations. The first section of it was 50 megawatts, and which was with first solar technology. So it was a substantial number of exports from the United States as well in that, in implementing. So we get the jobs here and the exports, and the Jordanians got cutting edge technology and more power using their extremely plentiful solar resources in Jordan. Now, the interesting part that comes to today is that we, in the MENA region, we just recently brought forward for funding approval at USTDA is a project with this same pair of companies, with Kawar Energy and then actually a successor to CH2M Hill, for a what they are calling a virtual power plant. So it's a way to make better use of the existing technologies, including building in battery storage and into the grid, so that they can make the most efficient possible use of their generating capacity, including the solar project, in order to not, I mean, they will still build more generating capacity in the future, but to make better use of what they have and to integrate these new technologies like battery storage, which will also, intended here, is to serve as a spur to the government in developing and finalizing the regulations to make the use of battery storage more widespread in the country. So it's really an exciting thing. It's a long-term process in working on our project with, in many cases, with these infrastructure projects, but we do see then the tangible results, and they often can, when they are successful, lead to additional work down the road.
You know, Carl, it never fails. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. A virtual power plant. I had not considered that before. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with me and everybody else on the call today. I wanted to now take a moment and focus a little bit. I know one of the interests for the audience here today was focused on the Asian region and Asian markets, and I wanted to invite Verinda Fike to join us today on screen. Verinda serves as the Regional Director for the Indo-Pacific region for USTDA, and she's responsible as well for developing our agency strategy there, focused on our infrastructure project preparation activities and all of the cool, interesting public-private partnerships that we have coming out of there. One of the cool facts that I'll just share about Verinda Fike is that she has traveled and worked in over 50 countries and has managed projects in Asia, Africa, Middle East, and Europe. So she's been pretty much around the globe, around the world many times. So I'm thrilled to have Verinda join us today and share more of her experience. Verinda also has her Master's of Science in Public Policy from Georgetown University and her BA from University of Colorado, and speaks Mandarin Chinese. So just a ton of experience for us to share. Verinda, can you talk a little bit about the Asian region, just by definition of the nations that we work with there?
Sure, Diane, thanks so much. So as Todd already alluded to, we do have several priority countries in the Indo-Pacific region. He mentioned several of them. So, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam are our priority countries in the region. But as Todd already alluded to as well, we do have significant funds from the Department of State to program additional funding in the Indo-Pacific. And that additional funding has allowed us to expand our view of the Indo-Pacific and pursuing activities in places such as Papua New Guinea. We did our first grant there earlier this year for an ICT modernization plan for their electricity utility. And we're looking at other places in the Pacific Islands. We're also looking more at South Asia, such as focusing on new opportunities in Bangladesh and the Maldives potentially, as well as the lower Mekong region. So looking at opportunities in Burma, Laos, and Cambodia, which would be new areas for USTDA to engage.
That's quite a large swath of territory there. Can you speak a little bit about how long USTDA has been focused in Asia and any of the exciting export opportunities that you see coming forward?
Sure. So we've been engaged in Asia really since the agency's creation. And, we've seen healthy results throughout the duration that we have been in Asia. We have several exciting opportunities. We will be having several opportunities for U.S. companies to bid on our opportunities on our website. Some of them I can't disclose right now, but later next week, actually, we'll be having a couple pop up there. But the other exciting area that we have been working is through the 3 initiatives that the US government launched now about 3 years ago, the Digital Connectivity and Cybersecurity Partnership, the Asia Enhancing Development and Growth Through Energy, or Asia EDGE, as well as the Infrastructure Technical Assistance Network. And these initiatives are a whole of government approach to be more proactive of offering or finding opportunities for US companies to engage in infrastructure opportunities. And what we often hear in Asia is that there are many infrastructure projects, but many of them are not bankable for US companies to really engage. And that's really where TDA's tools come into play by offering that early stage development assistance for feasibility studies or technical assistance to get these projects to a bankable status. So we're very excited. Earlier this year, we launched several new smart cities activities. One focused in Iskandar in Malaysia, focused on ICT modernization for a smart region within Malaysia. And this was actually our first grant in Malaysia in over a decade as well. We're also looking at 5G deployment throughout the region. We've previously supported opportunities in the Philippines for 5G deployment. We're looking to do more of that in Vietnam through workshops, and then in India as well to do some potential technical assistance work in that area. In the energy sector, we've been very focused on LNG, on smart grid, on renewable integration and energy storage in places like Thailand and India. And then through the ITAN network, the Infrastructure Technical Assistance Network, we've been very focused on a number of different areas, including dredging around the port sector in Bangladesh, focusing on the railway sector in Bangladesh as well. We'll be bringing over a delegation from Bangladesh to focus on railway engineering training next year when we are able to host events again. And also just in aviation. I know you have a question on the Southeast Asia Aviation Cooperation Program, so I'll save that for now. But in healthcare and agriculture too, we are exploring some opportunities. I think as we've seen from COVID-19, there is a lot more that we can do for infrastructure with regards to resiliency. So whether it's a hospital that's looking at designs for better infection control, whether it's an electricity grid, we're finding that a lot of utilities can't even go out to read the meters physically because of the pandemic and the social distancing requirements for very compact cities, which is a lot of places that we work in Asia. So smart metering is going to be an opportunity that we're more focused on. And then in agribusiness too, we do see a lot of opportunity in cold chain and the supply chain to move food either from the US or regionally to make sure that it's fresh and safe for people to eat. So those are a few of the exciting opportunities across the board that we have coming up.
Wow, that's a lot. That's even more than I was expecting. No shortage of opportunity there. You already alluded to it, but let me make sure because I know Utah is specifically interested in aviation. Can you talk about the Asian Aviation Cooperation Program a bit?
Yeah, so we actually have two aviation cooperation programs in Asia. So one is in India, the India Aviation Cooperation Program, which has been in existence for almost 10 years now. And that was modeled actually after a cooperation program that we had in China. And basically it's a public-private partnership. We have about 25 US companies that are part of this public-private partnership. And we coordinate very closely with the FAA, which is a partner, and TSA and the Department of Transportation. And based on that model in India, just late last year in November, we launched the Southeast Asia Aviation Cooperation Program, which has already 20 US member companies. And we did a call for proposals. We received over 20 proposals, and we're sifting through those to do more work in the aviation sector. I think we're finding, especially given the pandemic, how significantly affected the aviation sector has been, both from the US company angle, as well as our partners in the region who are really struggling to adjust to this new way of operating. So we're planning to double down our investments in aviation and the Southeast Asia Cooperation Program with our 20 member companies. It's free to become a member company. So if you're interested in joining, feel free to reach out to Dianne and she can connect you all to me. And we're going to be doing some joint activities on executive development and management training. We're finding a lot of aviation professionals, and this is based on a model that we had in China that was, I think, going for about 14 years. A lot of them have, technical training, but don't necessarily have the management training to, manage an airline, manage an airport, or to, rise in the ranks of the regulatory authority in the country. So we're very excited about that program. We'll be doing a series of workshops on airport design, runway design, and then and security as well. So again, if you're interested, please feel free to reach out.
That's great. That's a lot of information there. And I think Verinda has given us some helpful tips and has alluded to some hot opportunities that everybody here should be looking for next week. Before we open it up for questions, I know we're running a little tight on time. Please be assured that if we don't get to your question today during the seminar, we can certainly field questions offline and make introductions. It looks like there's been a good chat going on here on the side with Todd Abrajano and one of our participants. So we can field those questions through the World Trade Center Utah and make sure we get you the information that you need. I want to move to my last question for you right now, Verinda, and that is, can you talk a little bit about the Indo-Pacific Business Forum that was held last year and what we're expecting this year, and some of the exciting new programming that has been put into place as part of the IPBF?
Sure. So last year we were really thrilled to host, it was the second Indo-Pacific Business Forum. The first one was held in DC now 2 years ago. And we held the forum in Bangkok on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit and the ASEAN meetings that were taking place with several heads of states across ASEAN in Bangkok. And we were really pleased with the turnout. We had over 1,000 participants. Over 20 countries were represented. We had about 12 chief submissions and ambassadors who participated in the forum. And this year is different given the pandemic. So we're planning to bring the event to be an all virtual event. The East Asia Summit is planning to take place in Vietnam later this year in November. We are planning to host the forum in late October, and the details will actually be launching probably next week. So please, if you're interested in participating in this virtual event, which will be very exciting and will include topics on infrastructure, energy, healthcare will be a key topic this year, as well as financing for infrastructure projects. We're planning to have a robust set of panels with excellent speakers, both from the private sector, from the US government, as well as from governments throughout the Indo-Pacific to offer their perspectives. So very exciting. It'll be different to have this as a virtual platform, but I think we're very eager to see what that platform looks like. There will be opportunities to have one-on-one discussions with any of the panelists afterwards. We will have booth opportunities for folks to engage in a one-on-one setting as well. So hopefully it'll be very dynamic and useful.
Great, thank you so much. At this point, I want to open it up for questions. And if you have a question, if you can put that into the chat, that would be helpful. I want to see if Todd can join us back on screen. I had a specific question that I wanted to bring to him, which talks about US companies and how US companies can work with USTDA and small companies especially. And I know we had a question that came in earlier just about if there were any restrictions on the type or size of company that could benefit from working with USTDA.
So there are not size restrictions on the companies that we work with. We work with, one person shops all the way up to large Fortune 100 companies. I will say though, with respect to the companies that we do work with, we work with a large number of SMEs, and we're very proud of our work that we do with small and medium-sized enterprises. And for those of you that don't know this, the SBA typically sets an annual percentage goal for other U.S. government agencies to try to hit in terms of the work that they do with small and medium-sized companies. That typically lies somewhere in the 20% range. But over the last several years, USTDA has been anywhere from the upper 50s to 67%. And that's basically where we're sitting right now. So we do the vast majority of our work with small and medium-sized companies, but we also work a lot with the big companies that people all know about and hear about every day. So whether you're small or large, we are open to working with you as long as you have a product or a service that could be exported and be involved in the work that we do. So no restrictions on the size of companies that we work with.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Todd. I'm just looking here to see if I have any questions that have come in on the side. As we wait for questions to come in, I did have one follow-up question, and that is, this is kind of a tough one to answer. That's why I'm giving it to you, Todd. And that is, when will our reverse trade missions begin again? And are there any plans for reverse trade missions right now with the pandemic?
That is a great question, and one that we have been thinking about quite a bit internally within the agency. Obviously, the big benefit of our reverse trade missions is to be able to bring those decision makers over to the United States so that they can see, the great technologies that we have being utilized. And with the travel restrictions that are happening all over the world, that's obviously very hard to do right now. We have thought about this a lot. Our entire agency is under mandatory telework at the moment, so no one's going into the office, and we're certainly not bringing people into the United States at this point. But we have been looking very closely at trying to figure out how we can possibly convert our reverse trade missions to a virtual format in some circumstances. The other thing that we've done is, we typically will only do sort of a 1-year contract with the companies that we contract with to run our reverse trade missions, but we have extended that now to 2 years so that we've got some flexibility in terms of the timing of when we will bring folks over to the United States. But as I mentioned earlier, reverse trade missions are one of the biggest things that we do and provide really the biggest impact for U.S. companies. And we would love to be able to get those started again as soon as we possibly can.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Todd, for that answer. I know we're coming right up on time, and my else, I wanted to make sure that you had a chance. Want us to take a couple of the questions that just popped up, or if we need to go ahead, has hit me.
Sorry, Dianne.
Miles,
You froze up on my end. I don't know for sure if it's my problem or on your side, but can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can.
Perfect. That's great. I don't want to impose on your time. Maybe we have one final question here. Let's see, one last kind of general question, a couple specific examples. Can you describe one of one or two examples of the type of product or service that was exported through USTDA help, from which state and to which country? So it sounds like maybe we wrap up, do a couple quick examples, help people really think through specifically what state to what country, what industry, what product, and then from there we can go ahead and wrap things up, and we can all get back on with our busy schedules. Does that work okay, Diane? And I don't know who, Todd, if you're best to answer that question or somebody else is.
You know what, why don't we kick that question to both Carl and Verinda and let each one of them give an example of something that they've been able to do recently in their regions.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to give an example of the example that I gave sort of in the Philippines and helping the deployment of 5G. So to help the Philippines, the largest telecom operator, PLDT, roll out their 5G network and strategy, we supported US company Cisco, and I have apologized, I should know where their manufacturing base is, but we supported Cisco for their bid for a project to beat out the competition, which was Huawei in this case. They did win the tender, and which resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. exports, as well as hundreds of jobs created in the U.S. as a result of our support. So I apologize that I don't know the specific state, but that is an example of a software company and our support to that company in their participation in a bid in the Philippines.
I can give just two pretty straightforward examples of, I mean, this is, obviously we do a lot of work with small businesses, but we also do work with the large companies. And so GE, we have supported a very large number of exports of GE gas-fired turbines, largely manufactured in South Carolina. So that's in the billions of dollars worth of exports actually. And similarly, Boeing, I mean, we have worked very hard with Boeing for aviation projects. And obviously for both of these, the number of small businesses that also support through their, suppliers and so on and so forth. So when we're supporting these larger exports from, in this case, Washington State and other places all around the country that Boeing and its suppliers are manufacturing, it's exports from everywhere. And in this case with Boeing to everywhere.
That's great. Two great examples. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And again, as we wrap this up, a huge thanks, Todd, to you and your team, Dianne, Carl, Verinda, for sharing your perspective, your expertise. I was taking notes throughout. I even emailed a couple of different companies that should have been on the call today that weren't. They're doing some energy work in Jordan. And so I said, hey, you got to check this out. So Carl, expect an intro from me to a couple different companies here in Utah that are working on a pretty big project in Jordan that I think fits in the type of work that you're doing. And I made notes of a couple other companies that I'm going to follow up with. And that's really what I'd like to emphasize at the end. At the end of the day, we do these webinars, we come together, and if these webinars don't prompt positive action that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't gotten together today, then we're not successful. So our success is really in the follow-up and taking action. And so I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Nicole Sherwood on the World Trade Center Utah team, she's our STEP director, she does our operations. She also is our key person on the team working with our federal partners on national resources. Anybody in Utah, heck, anybody beyond Utah, for those who tuned in outside of Utah, can reach out to Nicole. She can take your questions and help make sure you get connected with the right people at USTDA. Also, we can, and Diana will coordinate with you on the best way to make those introductions and to get the right companies with the right people on the USTDA team so we can do this follow-up. And looking in the participant list again, Chris Boyle, I should have recognized in the beginning. He's the chair of the Utah District Export Council. He's also the president and founder of Global Access, a great company who's helping other companies grow internationally. So Chris, we can help get information out to the deck as well. And so that more companies can participate, can follow up, and can ultimately increase their exports and help use U.S. private sector solutions to solve some of these development challenges around the world. And so we look forward to following up. We look forward to helping to support that positive action. And again, thank you, Todd, Dianne, Carl, and Verinda for taking time to share this expertise with us. And thank you to all the companies who participated. And we look forward to working together to keep moving forward and we'll all keep fighting the good fight. So thank you all. Have a great day. And we will be in touch in this follow-up stage. Thank you.